Assalamu alaikum. This video is going to explain for you chapter 3, which is about business in a global environment. The question is at the beginning, why do nations trade? Nations trade because they don't produce all the products that their inhabitants need. Countries are importers when they buy goods and exporters when they sell products, which means that why there is a trade between nations, because countries cannot produce all its needs from products, because they do not have all the materials which is sufficient for producing all its products or services, because this differs according to the climate, according to the materials available in each country. So, to explain how countries decide what products to import and what products to export, economists use the concepts of absolute and comparative advantage. What's the meaning of absolute advantage and comparative advantage? Absolute advantage means that if it is the only source of particular product or can make more of product with the same amount of or fewer resources than other countries, which means a country is called that it has absolute advantage in producing certain product when it is the only source of this product, when it is the only country that can provide this product, or it can make more, the volume that it can produce from this product is higher than other countries using the same resources. يبقى احنا هنا السؤال هو ليه النيشنز اصلا بتعمل تجارة ما بينها، او انا بشتري حاجة بره البلد بتاعتي؟ لان مش كل الدول تقدر توفر لسكانها كل احتياجاتهم من المنتجات، لان ده حاجة بتختلف من بلد للتانية حسب الريسورسز اللي عندها، حسب الموارد اللي عندها، حسب الكلايمت بتاعها. يعني في مثلا ممكن برودكتس محتاجة ماتيريالز معينة ما بتتزرعش في بلد حر او ما بتتزرعش في بلد برد، فتضطر انها تستورد الماتيريال بتاعتها. طب احنا عشان نقدر نقول مين احسن ان انا كبلد ان انا اقدر انتج البرودكت ده، احنا قلنا في حاجة اسمها absolute advantage وحاجة اسمها comparative advantage. الابسوليوت ادفانتج معناها ان الكونتري دي او النيشن دي تكون هي الوحيدة اللي بتقدر تنتج البرودكت ده، او تكون بتنتج من البرودكت ده كميات كبيرة باستخدام نفس الموارد اللي بتستخدمها بلد تانية. يعني نكون بلدين لينا نفس الموارد ولينا نفس حجم الموارد، لكن انا اقدر انتج اكتر منك من نفس البرودكت، يبقى ده معناها ان انا عندي absolute advantage in producing this product. What's the meaning of comparative advantage? Comparative advantage means that the country can produce a certain product at a lower opportunity cost. What's the meaning of opportunity cost? Opportunity costs are the product that country will leave in order to produce another product. يعني ايه comparative advantage؟ comparative advantage يعني ان الكونتري تقدر تنتج منتج معين ب lower opportunity cost. ايه هي lower opportunity cost؟ opportunity cost means اللي هي تكلفة الفرصة البديلة. يعني انا علشان انتج حاجة هضطر اوقف انتاجي من برودكت معين عشان انتج البرودكت التاني. هل ده هيكون بالنسبة لي هيعمل عليا تكلفة؟ لو انا اقدر انتج برودكت معين او اضحي بانتاج برودكت معين عشان انتج واحد تاني بتكلفة اقل، يبقى انا عندي كده comparative advantage. In order to understand the meaning of absolute advantage and a comparative advantage, I'm going to explain for you a very simplified case to clarify the difference between comparative and absolute advantage. This case study is going to simplify things by imagining the world with only two countries. You will imagine that in the whole world there are only two countries, the Republic of High Tech and the Kingdom of Low Tech. يعني احنا هنتخيل في الكيس دي ان العالم كله عبارة عن بلدين، بلد اسمها the Republic of High Tech والبلد التانية اسمها the Kingdom of Low Tech. Each country knows how to make two and only two products. وكل واحدة each one of them will produce only two products, wooden boats and telescopes. كل واحدة فيهم بتنتج two products بس، wooden boats و telescopes. Each country spends half of its resources means labor and capital, on each good. وكل واحدة منهم هتنفق نص الموارد بتاعتها من labor من عمالة وكابيتال on each good. This figure will show that comparative advantage in the text shows the daily output for both countries. They are not highly productive as we have imagined two very small countries. In front of you, country high tech produced 3 boats and 9 telescopes. Country low tech produced 2 boats and 1 telescope. The question here, there are 3 main questions. Which country has absolute advantage? Which country has a comparative advantage? Does it better for each country to specialize or not? I told you before in the previous slide that absolute advantage means the country is the only source of a certain product, or to produce higher quantity or higher volume of a certain product using the same resources like other nations. In this case we can say that this country has absolute advantage. انا قلت لكم في السلايدز اللي قبل كده ان انا عشان اقول ان بلد عندها absolute advantage معناها يا اما هي المنتج الوحيد لبرودكت معين، يا اما هي انها بتنتج كميات اكبر من البرودكت ده باستخدام نفس حجم الموارد لبلاد اخرى. يبقى كده في الحالة دي هي عندها absolute advantage. يبقى اول حاجة if we look to this table we will find that high tech produce 3 boats while low tech 2 boats. High tech produce 9 telescopes while low tech produce 1 telescope, which means that high tech has absolute advantage in producing both boats and telescopes. Why? Because it produces higher volume of production in boats and higher volume of production in telescopes, 3 versus 2 in boats, 9 versus 1 in telescopes, using the same resources because each of the 2 countries spent half of its resources in the production of these 2 products. يبقى احنا لو احنا بصينا قدامنا هنلاقي ان هاي تك بتنتج 3 بوتس ولو مقابل 2 بوتس من لو تك، وبتنتج 9 تلسكوبس مقابل 1 تلسكوب من لو تك. يبقى معناها ان هاي تك عندها absolute advantage لانها بتنتج كميات اكبر من نفس المنتج باستخدام حجم نفس الريسورسز. هي عندها absolute advantage في إنتاج ال 2 products يعني في البوتس وفي التلسكوبس. Here is the answer for the first question that I told you in the previous slide. And high tech has an absolute advantage in producing both products because of the 3 boats versus 2 and 1 telescope versus 9. The question here is, why doesn't high tech make all the boats and all the telescopes needed for both countries؟ يعني خلاص طالما كده ليه هاي تك ما تنتجش كل احتياجات كل الاحتياجات من التلسكوبس ومن البوتس للبلدين؟ Because it lacks sufficient resources and must therefore decide how much of its resources to devote to each of the 2 goods. لأن هي مش هيبقى عندها enough resources, it will not have enough resources to be able to cover the production that satisfy the needs of the inhabitants of both countries. It can produce for its own self only. So the question is, why this country didn't specialize in one of the 2 products? That's what we are going to explain through explaining the comparative advantage for both countries. Assume, for example, that each country could devote 100% of its resources on either of the 2 goods. Start with boats. If both countries يعني هنفترض ان كل واحدة من البلدين will devote all of its resources 100% of its resources for producing only one product of the 2 products. يعني كل واحدة هتخلي كل مواردها موجهة لإنتاج حاجة واحدة بس من الاتنين either boats or telescopes. And we are going to start with boats. If both countries spend all the resources in boats and make no telescopes, here what happens? Why we are going to make this assumption? We are going to make this assumption in order to determine which one of the 2 countries is able to produce boats with a lower opportunity cost. Because I told you before that in order to say that certain country has comparative advantage, it must be able to produce a certain product at lower opportunity cost than another country. So here this assumption will let us assume that this country is going to devote, both countries are going to devote all of their resources for producing only boats. What will happen? Based on the assumption of the previous slide that both countries are going to produce only boats and leave or stop producing telescopes, what will happen? Let's look in high tech. High tech makes, for example, 3 boats and 9 telescopes, which means it's going to give up producing telescopes and devote all of its resources in producing boats. The opportunity cost to make the 9 telescopes, thus the opportunity cost of making each boat is 3 telescopes. 3 telescopes. We are going to divide 9. 9 is the number of the telescopes given up or stop producing 9 telescopes and produce 3 boats. 9 over 3 equal 3, which means the opportunity cost for high tech to stop producing telescopes or leave producing telescopes and concentrate in producing boats equal to 3. While low tech, the opportunity cost is going to leave 1 telescope and produce 2 boats, which means it's going to divide 1 divided 2, which means that the opportunity cost for low tech to stop producing telescopes and continue in producing boat is half. يعني دلوقتي أنا لو بقول إن هاي تك هتوقف خالص إنتاج التلسكوبس وهتنتج البوتس، يعني هتسيب 9 عشان تنتج 3، يبقى الأوبورتيونيتي كوست بتاعتها كام؟ 3. لكن لو تك هتسيب 1 وهتنتج 2، يبقى الأوبورتيونيتي كوست بتاعها كام؟ half. Which opportunity cost is lower, 3 or half? I think that the half is smaller than 3, which means that low tech is able to produce boats at lower opportunity cost than high tech. Or in other words, that low tech has comparative advantage in producing boats than high tech. يبقى أنا لما هاجي أقارن ما بين الopportunity cost في نفس الحالة بتاعة البلدين هلاقي إن لو تك نص هاي تك 3، يعني معنى كده إنها تقدر تنتج عند opportunity cost أقل البوتس، يبقى معنى كده إن لو تك عندها comparative advantage عشان to produce البوتس لأنها is able to produce it at lower opportunity cost. يبقى therefore low tech enjoys lower opportunity cost because it must give up less to make the extra boats، لأنها تقدر تستغنى عن أقل أو هتخسر أقل لو قررت إنها تنتج extra boats. It has comparative advantage for boats because it's better, that is more efficient at making boats than at making telescopes. يبقى معنى كده it should specialize in making boats. يبقى معنى كده لو احنا قررنا if we decide to for each country to choose which product to specialize, it's better for low tech to specialize in producing boats. Let's say what will happen in the second assumption. The second assumption is here, what happens if each country spent all of its time in making telescopes and stop producing boats? No boats. What will happen? This means that high tech is going to produce 9 telescopes and leave 3 boats, which means that its opportunity cost is going to be 3 over 9, which means 1 over 3, 1/3. And if low tech decided to devote all of its resources in producing telescopes and leave boats, which means that it's going to produce 1 telescope and leave 2 boats, which means that its opportunity cost is equal to 2 over 1 equal 2. Here it's clear that the opportunity cost of high tech in producing telescopes is lower than the opportunity cost of low tech in producing telescopes, because high tech opportunity cost is 1 over 3 versus 2 for low tech. So it's better for high tech to specialize in producing telescopes than boats. And it's better for low tech to specialize in producing boats than telescopes. يعني احنا هنا لو بصينا لو قلنا ان كل البلدين هيقرروا انهم يوقفوا البوتس وينتجوا تلسكوبس، يعني معناها ان هاي تك هتوقف انتاج 3 وتنتج 9، يبقى الاوبورتونيتي كوست بتاعتها ايه؟ 3 على 9 و1 over 3. وان لو تك قررت توقف البوتس وتنتج تلسكوبس، فهتنتج واحد وتوقف 2 بوتس which means ان الاوبورتونيتي كوست بتاعتها 2/1 يعني 2. يبقى معنى كده ان الاوبورتونيتي كوست في انتاج التلسكوبس لهاي تك اقل من لو تك، لان في هاي تك 1/3 وفي لو تك 2. يبقى معنى كده من الافضل لهاي تك انها تسبيشالايز في انتاج ايه التلسكوبس because it can produce it at lower opportunity cost versus low tech country. Here is the answer of the third question, which is, does it better for each country to specialize in producing? Yes, it's better. The answer is yes, it's better for each country to specialize in producing certain product. As it was clear from the previous slide, it's better for high-tech country to specialize in producing telescopes, while it was better for low-tech country to specialize in producing boots, because each one of the two countries can produce this product at lower opportunity cost, or in other words, it has a comparative advantage in producing these products. And that's why we say that high-tech country, it has absolute advantage in production, but it cannot or it doesn't have enough resources or sufficient resources to cover all the needs of both countries. So it's better for each country to specialize in certain product. عشان كده ده بيجاوب على السؤال اللي اتقال قبل كده. هو ليه هاي تك رغم ان عندها ابسوليوت ادفانتج ما تنتجش للبلدين؟ لان مش هيبقى عندها الموارد الكافيه. فبنشوف انهي واحده فيهم او كل واحده فيهم تقدر تنتج انهي برودكت عند تكلفه فرصه بديله اقل، وعلى الاساس ده بنقول البلد دي هتتخصص في انتاج المنتج ده، والبلد دي هتتخصص في انتاج، يعني الهاي تك هتتخصص في التلسكوبس والتانيه هتتخصص في البوتس. How do we measure trade between nations? ازاي نقدر نحسب التريد ما بين النيشنز؟ To evaluate the impact of its international trade, a nation looks at two keys: balance of trade and balance of payment. Balance of trade is calculated by subtracting the value of its import from the value of its export. يعني البالانس اوف تريد ده بنحسبه ازاي؟ بنحسبه عن طريق ان احنا بنطرح الامبورتس من الاكسبورت. We are going to subtract the value of the country's import from the value of the country's export. يعني we are going to subtract what the companies buy from what the companies sell in order to find whether it has trade surplus or trade deficit. If its export exceeds its import, this means that it has trade surplus. And if its import is greater than its export, this means it has trade deficit. يعني لو اللي هتشتريه اكتر من اللي هتبيعه يبقى عندها ديفيسيت، عندها عجز. ولو اللي هتبيعه اكتر من اللي هتشتريه او اللي هتصدره اكتر من اللي هتستورده يبقى عندها trade surplus فائض. What's the meaning of balance of payment? Balance of payment is the difference between the cash inflows and the cash outflows, the cash coming into the country and the cash going out of the country. One of the biggest factor in the balance of payment is the balance of trade, or the money that comes from the difference between the company export and what the company import, what the company buy and what the company sells. Other factors in the balance of payment or other cash inflows and outflows, such as the cash received or paid, the cash received from foreign investment, loans, tourism, foreign aid, and other cash out or cash outflows like the military expenditures. يعني هنا البالانس اوف بيمنت بيتحسب ازاي؟ احنا قلنا البالانس اوف تريد is the difference between the imports and the exports of the country. البالانس اوف بيمنت هو الفرق ما بين التدفقات النقدية اللي داخلة البلد واللي خارجة من البلد. عنصر اساسي او عامل مهم جدا في البالانس اوف بيمنت البالانس اوف تريد، اللي هي الفلوس او الكاش فلو الناتج عن الفرق ما بين الاكسبورت والامبورت. خلاص. لكن البالانس اوف بيمنت في فاكتورز تانية، في كاش انفلوز واوت فلوز تانيين، زي الكاش الانفلوز اللي داخل من الاستثمارات الاجنبيه، من المساعدات الاجنبيه، من السياحه، والكاش اوت فلوز زي النفقات العسكريه، الميليتري expenditures. The last thing in this chapter are the opportunities in international business? For a company to expand beyond national borders, there are many ways to get involved in international business. The first way is importing, which means involves purchasing products from other countries and reselling them in one's own, which means that the country is going to purchase products from different countries and sell it by its own، يعني تشتري من بلاد تانية وتبيعها عندها. Exporting, which means selling products to foreign customers. This is clear, to sell products to other countries, to foreign countries. Under a franchise agreement, a company grants a foreign company the right to use its brand name and sell its product. We explain the meaning of the franchise in chapter 2. A licensing agreement allows foreign company to sell company's product or use its intellectual property in exchange for royalty fees. Through international contract manufacturing or outsourcing, a company has its product manufactured or services provided in other countries. Strategic alliance is an agreement between two companies to pool or to attract talent and resources to achieve business goals that benefit both partners. A joint venture is a specific type of strategic alliance in which a separate entity funded by the participating companies is formed to manage the alliance. The last thing, which is foreign direct investment, the FDI, refers to the formal establishment of business operations on foreign soil, which means that a foreign company can make an investment on a foreign soil, or certain country which will make foreign investment in a foreign soil.